guys, in the last video we cleaned up the carburetor and replaced the fuel pump, but we want this to be a reliable outboard motor. Let's put some fuel line in it. As I said in the intro, we cleaned up the carburetor and replaced the fuel pump in the last video, but I didn't have any fuel line. Now I do. Let's replace the main feed that goes from the quick disconnect here on the side of the outboard over to the fuel pump, and then replace the line that goes from the fuel pump to the carburetor. Easy way to do that, 7/16 wrench, and we back off. There's a bolt here that holds this whole assembly into the motor. Of course, the snap ring in behind is a little bit too big to go through the hole. We'll break out the old poverty pliers to see if we can get that. There's our fuel fitting. You can see where the bolt used to go in, and it turns on there fairly easily, but it doesn't want to come out. Take a utility knife and give it a little slice, see if we can get it to separate. And that's the fitting. I'll give this a little squirt with some parts cleaner and get it all cleaned up as best I can. We don't want to be pumping any dirt into the fuel system that we've already got cleaned up. And as you can see, that original fuel hose is pretty stiff. Given that this outboard was built in 1971, I can pretty much guarantee you that this hose is not designed to deal with any ethanol and fuel. I'm not sure how good a quality this stuff is. I got this from my local BRP dealer, so looks to me like it's stuff that's probably going to work okay with ethanol. Well, we've got that out of there. Let me grab a rag and just wipe around some of the scum that's in the bottom. Doesn't have to be perfect, but we'll take advantage of the access that we have. One thing we'll have to be careful of, we've got a ground lead that goes from the block down to this lower fascia, and probably want to make sure that we get that connected back up as well. This being essentially the modern style of a fuel fitting, one of the holes that goes into the hose, which we just happen to have sitting here, is a lock, and then the fuel actually flows through the lower. Gets seated in there, and in theory makes a good connection. Older Johnson, Evinrude, OMC fuel fittings, they used a 3-lug fuel connector. One was the barb. Then you had one that would go out and pressurize the fuel tank, and then you had the one that brought the fuel back into the motor. I had a 1950s 5.5 Johnson when I was a kid. That had a special fuel line and also required a different style of tank. But this is basically the same as any of the modern or more modern Evinrude outboards up until when they discontinued making them. I'm going to try using Oticure ear clamps. I prefer these to like a worm gear clamp, and even to the spring clip clamps that were on there. This does a nice job. It provides a good amount of pressure across there, and we crimp on these with a pair of straight cutters like this, and it tightens them down nicely. This feeds across to the fuel pump, and of course it has a little bit of curl to it, so it's going to be just a little bit annoying to get it across underneath the motor, but I've got it. We'll feed the Oticure clamp on here. I think we're going to have to square up the end of that. Yeah, it's got a beveled edge. Nice square end. Feed that back out through the lower tray. I've got that boss that the screw goes into lined up. We've got our star lock washer, our ground wire, and our bolt. Hopefully that will all line up. There we are, started into the hole. Take the 7/16 wrench and snug it back up again. Now we need to crimp the Bodecker clamp on in behind there. And we'll try and get you in to be able to see that. Unfortunately, that is about the best angle I can get for you guys. And I'm going to put my big hands in front of the lens, so I don't know how much you'll be able to see. What we do is we just give this a squeeze, and we don't have to tighten it up all the way. We want it just a little bit loose so we can turn it 180 degrees. And now we've got the second ear is all the way up, and we'll give it a good squeeze. And that feels like it is well locked down. Now we've got our inlet for the fuel is cleaned up, and we've got a new hose attached to it. Let me restage the camera, get you over on the other side of the motor where we've got the fuel pump, and we'll reconnect the main feed line over there. As I showed you in the last video, here is the fuel pump. We've got our little inlet screen that is just held on with the thumb screw, and that comes off, gives us access to it. We'll leave a little bit of a service loop, cut the hose off about here. We'll put another ear clamp on here, hold everything nice and tight, and here's our screen. We'll just work this barb into the end of the hose. We take our ear clamp, and I'm going to put the ears kind of parallel with the front face of the fuel pump, so we don't end up with an interference, although I think it'll be clear. It's a few days after where I left off last time. In between, there's been a business trip, and I had to order in some fuel line from Amazon. The stuff that I had, or the stuff that I got from the local BRP dealer, was way too small. So I got a, I don't know, 10 or 12 foot chunk of this 3/16 fuel line. Looks like pretty close to the right stuff. So we'll get this fed underneath and over to the fuel pump. I don't know if the original clips are the best to use. I've got a whole bunch of different clips here. Yeah, looks like this is about the right size. We'll give these a try. I prefer to use an ear clamp rather than a spring clip, but I don't think I have small enough ear clamps to work in that on this hose. This is the smallest ear clamps that I've got, and we put those on there. That might squash down enough, but I don't think so. Take our standard old pliers, give it a good squash, and we'll shove it a good ways on the line. I just rough cut this, approximate. So we'll feed it through and we'll see what it looks like. Yeah, it's way too long. That's okay. We'll make it work and hook up on one end, and then we'll trim it off to the right length. Unfortunately, it's kind of hard to get a decent angle on this. We've got to get down onto this barb that comes off the front side of the fuel pump. The original one came off the back bottom, and really it wouldn't have made a whole lot of difference to making this an easier job. Ultimately, the easiest way to do this would be if the fuel pump weren't on the outboard while we're doing this. However, since it was so much fun to get in there, I think we're just going to leave it well enough alone, and we will try and get this hose to slide up on there. We'll try our long hose pliers. That's seated on there quite nice. Now we'll see if we can get the spring clip to cooperate. Okay, it looks good. Get it to spin around to the front of the motor and not kink off would be good. It looks reasonably decent. We'll put the fuel screen back in place here while we're working on the fuel pump. That way it keeps it from all the parts and pieces getting lost. Let me bring you around to the front where we're working on the carburetor, and we'll get that connected up. Here's our fuel line coming around to the front. Leave a little bit of slack, work on things if we need to. Our side cutters should cut this fuel line off nicely. Try and get it as square as possible. Doesn't look too bad. Slide the spring clip down over the hose. Grab our hose pliers. I'm really liking these hose pliers. Squeeze our spring clip, pull it up over the barb, and there we are. That should have new fuel lines, just in case you didn't believe I was going to do it. One of the questions that I was asked, I think it was on the Will It Run video. Looking at the cowl, the commenter said that it was a 1973, and doing a little digging around, I've looked and found that there is this decal style for a 1973 available for about $55. I will probably get that if we can get everything else working properly. A little body work to do where things have been damaged over the years. Not a big deal. And while I agree that this cowl definitely matches a 73, my parents both insist it was purchased in 1971. I've taken a picture of the serial number. I'll throw it up on the screen, and if someone knows anything about deciphering the serial number, I'd appreciate you leaving a comment down below. I think we'll end it here. Thanks a lot for watching. Greatly appreciated. If you got this far in the video, can you throw me a thumb up? I'd like to ask you guys a favor. I'm trying to hit 500 subscribers by the end of July. That's the anniversary when I started posting videos 2 years ago. I'm hoping I can hit the 500 milestone at that point so that I can get the community tab up and running on my channel. And if you got this far in the video, throw me a subscribe, and then you'll get to see more of my content. Thanks a lot for stopping by, and we'll catch you in the next mess.